Hare Krishna. Welcome to our weekly discussions on Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we will be continuing with the first chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So far, in the 4 sessions, we have discussed the first 3 verses of the first chapter. The first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam defines the absolute truth. Who is God? What is absolute truth is defined in the first verse. Then in the second verse, first verse we discussed who or what is God, what is absolute truth. Second verse we discussed who or what is Srimad Bhagavatam, how Srimad Bhagavatam kicks out all cheating religion. And then in the third verse, last time, we discussed how the third verse is an invitation to all of us to relish Srimad Bhagavatam. So like this, the first 3 verses we discussed in great detail. From today onwards, we will take few verses together. We won't be taking only one verse. Now the Bhagavatam discussions is going to begin. The first 3 verses are over, and now we begin today with the 4th verse. So if you have access to Srimad Bhagavatam, please open the first chapter of the first canto, text number 4. Naimishe nimisha kshetre rishaya shaunakadaya satram sargaya lokaya sahasra samamasata. Who will read the translation? You will have to unmute and then read the translation. Yes, Priya Mataji.
Once in a holy place in the forest of Naimisharan, great sages headed by the sage Saunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees.
So now the Bhagavatam is being explained. So Mataji, you'll have to read the translations of every verse that we read today.
Okay.
Whichever verse we read, okay? So what we will do is I will chant the first line of the verse. All of you can remain muted and you can repeat after me. You don't have to unmute, so that you are also chanting the verse. It's not that only I am chanting. So remain muted and repeat after me. Naimishe nimisha kshetre rishaya shaunakadaya satram swargaya lokaya sahasra samamasata. Yes, Priya Mata, you can read the translation once again.
Once in a holy place in the forest of Naimisharan, great sages headed by the sage Saunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees.
Yes, so now the Bhagavatam is beginning officially. What is happening here is we are being introduced to Saunaka Rishi. Saunaka Rishi is leading a group of many sages who have all assembled in Naimisharanya, and they are going to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Suta Goswami. So basically, Srimad Bhagavatam is essentially a conversation between 2 groups. Please remember this. Shukdev Goswami has spoken the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. This is the first Bhagavatam conversation. For the Bhagavatam, essentially, Shukdev Goswami is speaking to Parikshit Maharaj. When Shukdev Goswami was speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, many sages were assembled there who were listening. And one of them was Suta Goswami. So Suta Goswami is now speaking what Shukdev Goswami spoke to Parikshit Maharaj. So when Suta Goswami is speaking, Saunaka Rishi is now going to ask questions. So Saunaka Rishi is going to tell Suta Goswami that you have heard the Bhagavatam which was spoken by Shukdev Goswami. So you please tell us. This is the way things are going on. Now this verse, the 4th verse, reveals to us that the sages had assembled at a place called Naimisharanya. Naimisharanya, even today, it is a place in Uttar Pradesh. We have gone there for yatra 3 times. In my life, I have gone 3 times there. It's a beautiful forest area. A lot of sages live there. It is cut off from material civilization. And it's a beautiful place. Even today, sages assemble there and they discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. They have a lot of holy spiritual activities happening there. And Naimisharanya is considered the center of the universe, according to the Vedic astronomy, Vedic calculation. It is a very, very holy place. Actually, if you see the way devotees see the world, the reality, and the other people see the reality, it's totally different. What we consider a center of universe, imagine telling this to a scientist, Naimisharanya is the center of the universe. He'll find it crazy. He'll say, what? What is Naimisharanya? You'll have no idea. But it is explained in the Bhagavad Gita that what is night for the ordinary person is day for the self-realized person. And what is night for the self-realized person is day for the ordinary person. What this means is that what we consider as very, very ordinary, materialistic people think it is very, very important. It's exactly opposite. Like, for example, we get up at, our devotees get up at 2:33 in the morning because we have deity worship and then we do our chanting. But if you see, many people after their parties, they go to sleep at 2:33 in the morning. And when we begin our day, like when we end our day, like around 8 o'clock, 8:30, I go to sleep generally. But that's when the parties begin. That's when life begins for many people. So that's the whole world is topsy-turvy for once you become a spiritualist. Once Srila Prabhupada was giving a class in he was saying that Naimisharanya is the center of the universe. Here he's saying that. Now people will find it bewildering. And once because many people will think Naimisharanya is some remote corner in the world. It's somewhere in a village in Uttar Pradesh. Because we don't have that vision like a pure devotee has. But when Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, which is arguably a very popular city in the world and well known, it's in USA, right? When Srila Prabhupada was giving a class there, he said, so today we have gathered, all of us have gathered together in this remote corner of the world. So for Prabhupada, Los Angeles was a remote corner. I mean, people would think Los Angeles is the center of the world, But for a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, Los Angeles was a remote corner where he had gone to give a talk. But for him, a place like Naimisharanya is the center of the universe. That's the difference in the way a pure devotee sees the world and an ordinary person sees the world. So what people think is valuable, pure devotees consider it as useless. And what pure devotees see as extremely valuable and precious, an ordinary person disregards it. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says, Yanisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagriti sanyami yasyam jagriti bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. What is night? Nisha means night. Yanisha sarva bhutanam. What is night for all living entities? Tasyam jagriti sanyami. That is the time for awakening for a self-realized person. Yanisha sarva bhutanam. And what is nisha? Yanisha sarva. What is night for all the people? Tasyam jagriti sanyami. That is the daytime for a self-realized person. And what is night for the self-realized person is the daytime for the materialistic person. So like this verse is introducing us to Srimad Bhagavatam, this is introducing us to Naimisharanya, and these sages have assembled to perform a 1,000-year sacrifice, yajna. Now, a yajna is performed with the fire and they make a big yajna kund and they put ghee and they put wood and there is fire burning. Now, generally, in the Vedic age, these sacrifices were performed for two reasons. It was performed to please the Lord or to express gratitude to the Lord. And it was also performed to bring auspiciousness and welfare for all the human beings. It was never for self. It was considered to be equal to something modern equivalent is paying taxes. Like, for example, you get sunlight, right? but you get electricity at your house, you pay monthly bill to the government for getting the electricity. For the water supply, you are paying bills, right? You have to pay. You pay the taxes, you pay the rent. Similarly, we are living on this planet where abundant rain is supplied to us, where there is sufficient sunshine. Are we paying the bill? Are we paying the electricity bill to Mother Nature? Like if you're thirsty and somebody gives you a cup of water, you spontaneously say thank you. But unfortunately, for many of us, our gentlemanly behavior ends right there. What about the abundant water that God is providing us? How are we expressing thank you? How are we saying gratitude to the sunshine, to the light that we are getting? So therefore, this gratitude is expressed through yajna, through sacrifices. So that is the whole culture or the attitude or idea of sacrifice. But in the modern day and age, Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport to this verse, in Kali Yuga, the sacrifice that is mentioned and recommended is Sankirtan Yajna. Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parsadam Yajna Sankirtana Prayer Yajantihi Sumedasa. In Kali Yuga, people's most intelligent way to perform yajna, sacrifice, is to come together and do Sankirtan. Kirtan means glorify the Lord. Sankirtan means come together and chant the names. So this is the way we glorify the Lord. This is the way we perform yajna. See, other sacrifices are not wrong. It is just that they're not recommended for this day and age. Sacrifices are good, but for modern day, considering the complexities in which we are living, considering the lifespan being very short, considering our memory and intellectual capacities to be very weak, considering our limitations and inadequacies, coming together and chanting and glorifying the Lord like we are doing right now. What we are doing right now is called Sankirtan, because we are coming together and hearing about the Lord. So this coming together and hearing and chanting is the yajna, is the sacrifice recommended for modern day and age. Again, I'm clarifying, this does not mean other sacrifices are not important. Kriteya dhyayato Vishnum Tretayam yajato makhe Dvapare paricharyayam Kalau tad harikirtana. In Satya Yuga, the sacrifice, the yajna mentioned was dhyan, meditation on Lord Vishnu. Tretayam yajato makhe. In Treta Yuga, the sacrifice mentioned was yajna. Dvapare paricharyayam. In Dvapar Yuga, elaborate temple worship was considered as the sacrifice that was recommended. In Kali Yuga, Hari Kirtana, chanting of the holy names of Krishna, is what is recommended. Just like, I don't know if you've traveled in the local trains of Mumbai. Now, there is an interesting system there. We used to have this monthly pass. So you take a monthly pass. So I would take a monthly pass to travel to Borivali, because I had to travel 3 or 4 times a week for my programs. So let's say you take a pass, and then you're traveling at the end of the month. The next day, the ticket collector catches you and he tells you, he says this ticket is not valid. And you tell him, see, the ticket says Churchgate to Borivali, and I'm traveling Churchgate to Borivali, I'm not traveling anywhere else. So the TC says that's perfect. You're traveling is Churchgate to Borivali. Secondly, the pass says it is first class and you are traveling in first class. So you're not breaking any rule there. And thirdly, it's talking about you. Your name is written on the pass and your identity card proves that it is the same person. Everything is perfect about this pass. The only problem is its expiry date is over. It's expired. It's no longer valid. That's all. So yajna, temple worship, meditation, all that is perfect. It's just that the time is over. Now is the time for coming together and chanting. Just imagine, the kind of brains, the kind of impressions we're carrying in our heart. Every human being has a dark side to him or her and the good side. But in modern day, we all have such a big, thick, dark side that it's so embarrassing. Considering the pain and considering the the negativities that we are carrying with ourselves, Sankirtan seems to be the most plausible option, most reasonable option. When you go to a chemist shop, the pharmacy shop, you don't tell the chemist that, okay, I have a fever, give me any medicine. After all medicines are same, so just give me any medicine. I mean, yes, so many pills there. You can't just say, give me any medicine, everything is okay. He will say, no, whatever is prescribed to you, that's what I'll give you. Similarly, we can't say, okay, do anything, any path, any meditation, everything is okay, everything is one. No. For the modern day and age, for the kind of situations we are in, the medicine recommended is chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. So the essence of the fourth verse, which we have discussed now, is that the sages have all gathered now. They want to know, they're performing a sacrifice for bringing welfare for mankind. And now, what are they going to do? They've all gathered. Let's see what they're going to do. So you'll have to repeat after me text number 5. And after we chant the verse, Priya Rajpal Mataji is going to read the translation. Please respond. Text number 5. Ta ekada tu munaya pratar huta hutatnaya Satkritam Sutamasinam Paprachur Idamadarat
One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters.
So now the Bhagavatam discussion is about to begin. The sages have assembled for a sacrifice, and one day early in the morning, they have gathered, they have performed their morning duties, they are all seated now, and the question answers is going to begin. Now Srila Prabhupada elaborates in the purport about early morning. It's very important that we perform spiritual activities early in the morning. That is called as Brahma Muhurta. Just before sunrise, the time is considered as very auspicious for performing spiritual activities. Of course, nowadays people get up very late, much after Lord Suryadev has appeared. But if we want maximum spiritual benefit, then we need to rise early in the morning. Because there are 3 energies in nature: Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. Mode of goodness is the energy which creates peace, tranquility, a feeling of goodness and well-being. And that energy is very rampant early in the morning. And mode of passion, which is full of action and activity, that energy is very prevalent during daytime. And at night, tamas or ignorance, which is darkness, sleep, inertia, madness, intoxication, all these things happen at midnight, late night. Tamas is active. So early morning, sattva, or it's the best time for performing spiritual activities. That's why you'll see temples open early in the morning. Liquor bars don't open at 4:35 in the morning. And temples don't open at 11:30 in the night. So there's a reason why temples open. There's a reason why people do yoga early in the morning. They do prayers early in the morning, because that energy, that atmosphere facilitates spiritual activities, because the atmosphere is surcharged with sattva. So like everything can be in these 3 modes: sattva, rajas, and tamas. Like for example, there is soft instrumental music, Hari Prasad Chaurasia playing his flute, Call of the Valley, Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma playing santur. That's very soft, soothing music that is in sattva guna. And a Bollywood number, where a lover is singing to his beloved, expressing love. It's a passionate love song. It is in the energy of passion, rajoguna. And some hard rock, with such blasting music that can make you deaf, and completely noisy kind of music, that music is in the mode of ignorance. So music can be in 3 modes, clothes can be in 3 modes. If you are wearing fresh, clean clothes, that is, the clothes are in the mode of sattva. If you're wearing tight outfits, flashy color, it's like mode of Rajas. And if you're wearing clothes that have not been washed for weeks together, that's like mode of ignorance. You see, clothes, food also, freshly cooked food, vegetables, fruit, they're all in mode of sattva. Hot, spicy food is in the mode of passion. And pungent food that has been kept in the deep freeze for a month. Like I went to Australia once, and we went to one house, and on Ekadashi they served prasadam, and there were leftovers, and they kept it in the refrigerator. I said, "Oh, you're going to eat it tomorrow?" Then Mataji said, "No, Prabhuji, we'll be using it next Ekadashi." so that was like 15 days they're going to keep it in the deep freeze. So that's like tamoguna, So food, so everything can be in three modes: food, music, clothes. So even the time of the day, early morning is a very good time for spiritual activities. So what we do is, we in the temple, like for example, in our temple, we have Mangalarti at 5 o'clock. And you feel very fresh after that. You feel very connected to the Lord, because morning, the mind is free. We are not occupied with the day's obligations and duties. You are able to chant. It's like traffic. Early morning, there is no traffic in the road. And you can easily drive. Similarly, chanting becomes very easy early in the morning because there's very less traffic in the brain. You're not busy with too many thoughts and planning and meetings. So therefore, it helps. So that is why the sages assembled early in the morning. And now, after assembling, they're offering respect to Guru. They want to hear from Sutta Goswami, and they're remembering Guru. So it is said that when we get up in the morning, the first thing we need to do is remember and respect our spiritual master, Guru, and remember Krishna. There are 3 times in the day when we are supposed to pause. I'll repeat. There are 3 times in the day when we are supposed to pause and meditate and reflect and connect and remember Guru, Krishna. And those 3 times are called as Sandhya. That's why we call it as Sandhya Vandanam. So many devotees, they chant Gayatri Japa, they chant meditation, they do silent meditation early morning, afternoon, and evening. These 3 times are, what Sandhya means a junction, like the junction means the period between 2 periods. Like early morning, night is over, but full-fledged day has not begun. So that is the first Sandhya, when the sun is about to rise, but night is over, but full-fledged day has not begun. So that's the first Sandhya, junction. The second junction is in the afternoon, when the day is over, it's full-fledged afternoon, and now slowly the evening is about to begin. It will start in some time. So that's the second junction. And the third junction is in the evening, when the sunset is happening. The day is over, but the night has not completely set in. So these 3 junctions are called Sandhya. And every spiritualist is supposed to offer prayers or Vandanam, Sandhya Vandanam. He's supposed to offer prayers at these 3 times. That's why in our temple, every day you'll see morning, afternoon, and evening, devotees, they sit and they chant their Gayatri Japa. They chant silently this meditation, because that is the way we pause. Because it's a life also has 3 junctions. Childhood, like when you are from at the age of 25 is the first junction in one sense. Like you are just one second. At the age of 25, you go through this junction because you are no longer a child and you're not fully become a settled grahastha as well. So that's when you take major decisions in life in terms of career, in terms of marriage. So that's like kind of the first junction. And there is a second junction around 50 when you go through midlife crisis, when you start worrying about your children's education, marriage, and you're wondering about your spouse. Have I married the right person? Have I chosen the right career? These kind of doubts plague you and you get into depression. That's also kind of crossroads we are in at the second junction. And then at the fag end of our life, at the age of 75, assuming that we live till the age of 75 or 80. So basically there are there is a life also have this period when it's like a transition period from one phase of life to the next phase. So these phases, these junctions are time for us to pause, slow down, reflect, and connect. So morning, afternoon, and evening, we pause. Whatever we are doing, we drop it. We breathe, we inhale, exhale, we meditate on the Lord and connect, chant our Gayatri, and resume our duties. Otherwise, we'll go crazy. Otherwise, the three modes, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, will drag us everywhere. When I see, many people can't relate to Gayatri Japa concept. So I tell them, breathe, meditation. We teach them three kinds of meditation: relaxed meditation, active meditation, and spiritual meditation or prayerful meditation. So these meditations are taught because people are not inclined to do Gayatri Japa. They don't know how to pause. So we tell them, okay, fine, just sit, take your alarm, put an alarm for 10 minutes, keep the phone, and sit straight, sit comfortably, and inhale and exhale. And mentally count 1. The second time you inhale and exhale, you can count 2. You can count till 10. And in between, if you forget and your mind is wandered off somewhere else and you're breathing, inhaling and exhaling, and at the time you remember, you come back to counting wherever you stopped. You resume your counting from there. And once you reach 10, again you start from 1. 1, 2. You can say this number in the mind. So like this, you keep counting till 10. Then again, you begin with 1. So after the end of 10 minutes, when the alarm goes off, you open your eyes and you feel refreshed. You feel rejuvenated. It was a 10-minute break where all the clutter from the head went away. Just like you go to the bathroom and take bath, or you clean your bowels and you become fresh. Similarly, the meditation is like a washroom for the mind. When we enter that space of breathing, inhaling, meditation, we remove all the clutter from our heads. So in the Vedic culture, there is a very scientific method for this. 3 times a day, you pause and remove the clutter. 3 times a day, you take bath, you become fresh in the mind. Because the rest of the time, you'll be busy with the day's activities. How relevant it is to modern time when people are so busy, when people are so passionately engaged. Therefore, this is a very important point. So early morning, the sages have assembled and they have performed their Gayatri Japa. They're remembering the Guru. They're remembering the purpose of their life. And now they're going to ask questions to Sutta Goswami. What is important to note here is the questions they are asking is in a mood of sincere inquiry. They are not asking questions in a mood of challenge. It's very important to know that when we ask questions in a spiritual program, the mood is we have a desire to know the truth. And we need to ask questions in that spirit. See, there are 3 things. When it comes to spiritual life, we need to ask questions, but we need to ask questions with 3 things in mind. First of all, we need to ask questions to the right people. Secondly, we need to have a desire to know the answers to those questions. We can't ask questions because, because I just simply want to do some time pass. No, I want to know the answers. And third, most important, when I have spiritual inquiry, I should be ready to pay the price. In the sense, I should be ready to invest time, energy into the practices. Like, for example, near our temple, there is one Panwala. If you've seen Shambhunath Panwala, it's quite popular. So if you go to him and tell him, oh, Bhai Sahab, हमको मुंबई से ज्यूरिक से एम्स्टरडैम और एम्स्टरडैम से लंदन और लंदन से मुंबई आना है, तो इसका टिकट आप देंगे? इसका टिकट कैसे मिलेगा? If you ask him return ticket from Zurich, Amsterdam, London via London to Mumbai, I mean, he's the wrong person to ask this question, right? He will say, go to the Air India office, go to a airline office and ask them. Okay, now you go to the proper airline office and you ask them. They say, fine, they explain to you all the flight details. And then they ask you, sir, madam, where do you want to go? Which place you actually want to go? And then you say, no, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm just asking for, fun. I mean, they'll say, what the hell? Why are you wasting our time? Okay, let's say you have a sincere desire to go to London, Amsterdam, etc. So both criteria you have fulfilled. You have gone to the right person, to the airline office. You have asked questions because you really have a desire to travel there. But it's after the end of the whole thing, you ask and they tell you that, okay, madam, the price is the entire fare will cost you 85,000 rupees. And you say, no, but I have only 1 rupee with me, I mean, if you can't afford, if you can't pay the price, then you can't travel there. Similarly, when we want to know about God, when we want to know about spiritual life, we can't go and say, we can't ask scientists because that is not their subject. Their subject is something else. They study matter. They don't study spirit. So we can't say, oh, the scientists are not talking about God. So, I can't believe in God because the scientists are not studying. Because scientists, that's not their subject. So we can't ask Shambhu. It's like asking Shambhunath Panwala about our airline tickets. Okay, when we ask devotees about spiritual life, we should be interested to practice spiritual life. We can't be asking questions and then saying, well, I'm asking because I want my children to become devotees, or I want my neighbor to become devotee. I'm just asking for the heck of it. Well, you're wasting your time and everybody's time. Okay, even if you ask questions and then the answer comes, okay, you have to chant Hare Krishna, or you have to do some meditation, etc. But you're not ready to do that. You're not ready to invest half an hour every day or 20 minutes every day. Then why are you asking questions? So it's very important to ask questions to the right person with a desire to know the answers and a willingness to pay the price. So here, when the sages have assembled at Naimisharanya and they are going to ask questions, they are in a sincere mood. They want to know the answers. They are willing to pay the price. So this is the way, this is the background. And now let us see what happens. Text number 6 will reveal the questions now they're going to ask. Okay. So we'll chant. This is the first. Now the sages headed by Shaunaka Rishi, they're going to start speaking now. Till now, it was the introduction. Now the sages are going to speak. So please repeat after me. This is text number 6. Maybe next time onwards, Rajan Prabhu, you can share the screen. If you have your computer, you can have the verses and then, you can put the verses on the screen and then everybody can see the verse. Okay. So today we'll chant text number 6. Please repeat after me. Rishaya uchuhu tvaya khalo puranani setihasani chanaga akhyatana adhitani dharma shastrani yanuta.
The sages said, respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life and in the Puranas and the histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them.
So here, what the sages are doing, the text number 6. Now you can remove the words because now we'll discuss. So what the sages are doing here is, they are respecting Sutta Goswami and they are now glorifying. You ask questions, before asking questions, you appreciate the speaker. So sages are saying, you are so good, you are well versed in the scriptures. So it's basically, they're setting the mood now. And the first thing they are saying about Sutta Goswami is that he's free from vice, V-I-C. Now, Srila Prabhupada elaborates on the 4 regulative principles. All of you know the 4 regulative principles that we speak about in ISKCON. Are you aware of this? No intoxication, no meat eating, no illicit sex, and no gambling. And there is a scientific reason for it. Because religion or dharma, human civilized life is founded on 4 pillars. And those pillars, if they are strong, then the building or the structure of religion, the structure of spirituality will remain strong. And those 4 pillars are ahimsa, tapa, shaucha, and satya. Ahimsa means non-violence, and tapa means austerity. Shaucha means cleanliness, and satya means truth. So religion or spirituality is founded on these 4 pillars, and all these 4 pillars should be strong. So non-violence, the principle of non-violence or ahimsa, that principle is broken in the society when rampant meat eating takes place through slaughterhouses. That is why ahimsa or no meat eating is emphasized. Then there is the principle of tapa or austerity. Now this tapa austerity principle is broken when there is intoxication. When a person gets intoxicated, there is no principle of austerity. Therefore, no intoxication is also given as a regulative principle. Then there is shaucha or cleanliness. The mental cleanliness is developed when there is physical cleanliness. And illicit sex directly violates this principle. Therefore, no illicit sex is emphasized. Sex outside marriage. And finally, the 4th principle is satya or truthfulness. And gambling is an activity which is said to break this principle. Therefore, no gambling. So like this, these 4 principles are given. And in this 6th verse, the sages are telling Suta Goswami that you are a very special person, akhyatani aditani. Hearing and explaining the scriptures is more powerful than simply studying them. So here, the emphasis is given on Shravanam, the process of Shravan and Kirtan. So what you are doing right now is hearing Krishna consciousness. So when you hear, that is called Shravanam. And after hearing, when you speak, that is called Kirtanam. So this process is glorified in this shloka, Shravan and Kirtan. So like this, they glorify Suta Goswami. And the text number 7, they are going to further glorify. The text number 7 and 8, they are further going to glorify the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text number 7, please repeat after me. Yani Veda Vidam Sreshto Bhagavan Badarayana Anye Cha Munaya Sutta Paravara Vido Vidhu.
Being the eldest learned Vedantis, O Suta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead, and you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge.
So what is happening here is, now the sages headed by Shaunaka Rishi, they are going to ask very important questions to Suta Goswami, and the entire Bhagavatam will be an answer to these questions asked by the sages. But before asking the questions, they are honoring the speaker, they are glorifying him. And for these verses are in that same mood of glorification, which concludes in the next verse, text number 8, which we will also chant now. Please repeat after me, verse number 8. Vetatvam saumya tatsarvam
Vetasvata Sonya Tatsarvam
Tatvatastadanugraha
Tatvadasa Anurata
Bruyo snigdasya shishyasya
Ruyo Sindha Sasya
Guravo Guyamapyuta.
Guravoya Machita. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us that all you have scientifically learned from them.
So here, again, this is the last of the glorification verses of the speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam. They are saying that you are gentle in nature. The secret of success is revealed here. The secret of success is to please one's guru. we always chant this verse. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado yasya aprasadan nagati kutopi. Success in spiritual life is based on how we please our Guru. So they are saying, oh, Suta Goswami, you have always pleased your Guru. You are such a wonderful personality. You are the most qualified to glorify Krishna. And now we have these questions which we are going to ask you. So from next week onwards, we are going to dive into the 6 questions that the sages asked Suta Goswami. And the next few chapters will be Suta Goswami's answer to these 6 questions. But what we have discussed today, the essence of today's discussion is that we need to understand that spiritual teachers are very special and we need to glorify them and we need to submissively hear from them and we need to honor holy places. Naimisharanya is a holy place. In fact, the scriptures explain that wherever a pure devotee of Krishna goes, that place becomes a holy place. See, Suta Goswami is in Naimisharanya, so they are saying Naimisharanya is a holy place. Srila Prabhupada went to New York and he chanted Hare Krishna in the park, in Tompkins Square Park and Washington Square Park. And American hippies, young boys and girls chanted, and they became devotees. So New York, in one sense, has become a holy place because a pure devotee transformed that place into a place of kirtan. So Srimad Bhagavatam beautifully describes Bhavadvida Bhagavati Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani Swantastena Gadabrita. Srimad Bhagavatam says that a pure devotee of Krishna who is glorified in today Bhagavatam, we have read 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 5 verses we read today. The main message of these 5 verses is a pure devotee of Krishna, Suta Goswami, always needs to be glorified and appreciated. And Srila Prabhupada is a classic pure devotee whom we need to appreciate because it is explained that Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho, because a pure devotee has the ability to convert an ordinary place into a holy place. Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani, and he is able to convert an ordinary place into a holy place because he is carrying Swantastena Gadabrita, because he is carrying the Lord in his heart. So because he has the Lord in his heart, wherever he goes, he creates a holy place. Today, if you go to New York, in Tompkins Square Park, they have put up, the municipality of New York has put up a big sign under that tree in which Srila Prabhupada did Kirtan. They have put up a big board saying that this is the origin of the Hare Krishna movement. And when ISKCON devotees go there, they do parikrama of that tree. It's like it's like going to a holy place pilgrimage. So can you imagine, of all places, New York has become a holy place. This is the power of a pure devotee. In fact, Srila Prabhupada was born in Kolkata, and today that place ISKCON has brought where he grew up. You know, Srila Prabhupada was born in the year 1896. So when he was born in the northern Kolkata, where there are 2 divisions in northern Kolkata, where the Britishers live and the section where the Indians live. So 151 Harrison Road, that was the place where Srila Prabhupada, his childhood name was Abhay Charan De. He was born to Gaur Mohan De and Rajini Devi. And now both sides of the road, there were blocks of properties owned by Loknath Malik. And in one of the building, 3-story building, a few rooms are taken by Gaur Mohan De and his family, and they were staying there. And Gaur Mohan De belonged to a very aristocratic Suvarna Vanik merchant family. And they were Vaishnavas, they were devotees of Krishna. So Gaur Mohan De would read Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. He would chant on his beats Hare Krishna mantra and he would worship the deities. So they were already devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Prabhupada was a young baby, 1.5 years old, he got typhoid. Look at this. Today we are talking about these 4 regulative principles. Something interesting. When Abhay Charan was a young baby, 1.5-year-old baby, he got typhoid, and their family doctor, Dr. Bose, came over and said, "You need to feed your child chicken soup. Only then he'll be all right." So Gaur Mohan De said, "We don't eat meat. We are Vaishnavas. We never touch meat." Dr. Bose said, "No problem. I'll cook it in my house and get it." So he brought it in a jar. And then Gaur Mohan, they said, we don't take meat, but for the sake of my child, if my child can live with this, I don't mind giving him chicken soup. So as soon as Dr. Bose put the chicken soup in the mouth of the baby, as soon as it touched, Abhay Charan vomited out everything that was there in his body. So Dr. Bose immediately said, oh, no, no, never mind, never mind. We will not feed chicken soup to the child. So he was not, see, what he was going to preach later on, he was spontaneously practicing it himself. And then 4 years later, in the year 1900, there was a very devastating plague that struck Kolkata, and every day 15 to 20 people were dying, and thousands of people had evacuated the city. At that time, something very amazing incident happened in Kolkata. This is recorded in history. One old Babaji, he came to Kolkata and he started Harinam Sankirtan, and Christians, Muslims, Parsis, Hindus, everyone followed him. They went from street to street in Kolkata doing Harinam Sankirtan, and they also came to 151 Harrison Road where Gaur Mohan Dey was staying, and he happily welcomed them. And when he welcomed them, and that time Abhay Charan was so small that his head would not even reach the knees of these chanters. But Abhay Charan also happily chanted and danced and clapped in that kirtan. And the next day, the plague disappeared from Kolkata. So Srila Prabhupada, from childhood, he was attached to the chanting and glorification of Krishna's holy names. And Gaur Mohan Dey, now why I'm saying this is because, we need to also glorify the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. For us, in ISKCON, Srimad Bhagavatam was given to us by Srila Prabhupada. So it's important to know how he was a pure devotee of Krishna from childhood. Just like Suta Goswami is being glorified, we also need to remember time and again glorify Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's father, Gaur Mohan Dey, was a cloth merchant. He earned moderate income. And what an interesting thing he would do every night before closing his cloth shop, he would keep a bowl of rice for the rats. He was so sensitive. He said, let the rats eat this rice so that they don't tear the cloth in the shop. So just to protect his clothes, he would also take care of the rats. And he was so gentle and sensitive, he would never punish his son Abhay. In fact, if he had to scold him, if Prabhupada as a young boy made some mistake, Abhay Charan would correct him in a very, very interesting way. He would tell him, Abhay, you have made a mistake and I am your father. It is my duty to protect you and care for you. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father would chastise him when he made a mistake. So as a duty, I am now going to scold you. And then he would scold him. You can imagine the high degree of awareness that Gaur Mohan Dey had. Srila Prabhupada would later say that his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, was a cloth merchant. He said, but my father's main business was puja. And cloth business he did just like to maintain the livelihood. So he said, what is the daily schedule? We're talking about the year 1900. So it's an interesting glimpse into the cultural life of Kolkata in the year 1900, 1910, 1920. Gaur Mohan Dey would get up in the morning at 7 o'clock. And then he would go to shop, he would purchase a few things. Until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he would do puja, worship of the deities. Just across their house was the famous Radha Govinda temple in Kolkata. So he would worship his deities till 1 o'clock, then he would take lunch and then go to the shop and take rest for an hour. And 10 o'clock, he would come back home in the night. And when he would come home at 10 in the night, he would again start puja. And he would bring the bell, ding, 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 ding. And Srila Prabhupada, he would be sleeping as a baby, as a young boy. He would wake up because of this sound. And after the puja, Gaur Mohan would sit and eat some kurmura, puffed rice. And sometimes Prabhupada would also sit next to him and he would also eat puffed rice. So Prabhupada said, my father's daily business was puja, worship of Krishna, and just for some time he would go to the shop. And Gaur Mohan Dey was so attached that his son becomes a devotee of Krishna. He had Vaishnava goals. He said, my goal is to make my son a mridanga player. Any sadhu would be going across Kolkata, you would invite him home, and you tell the sadhus, please bless my son that he gets the blessing of Srimati Radharani and becomes a pure devotee of Krishna. And Abhay's mother would say, I want to send my son to London and make him a barrister, make him a lawyer, and I want him to be called to the bar. And Gormonde would say, no, if he goes to London, he'll become a womanizer and a drunkard. No, 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 London is a bad place. Let him become a Vaishnava. He should become a devotee of Krishna. So you would get professional Mridanga players to teach his son Mridanga. So Srila Prabhupada's childhood was filled with devotion, education, and adventure. He said, I want to perform Rath Yatra. At the age of 5, little Abhay performed a Rath Yatra in his Harrison Road. The Maliks all gathered and they prepared a Chappan Bhog for Jagannath. And Abhay organized the entire Rath Yatra festival. Can you imagine a child is so attached to Krishna and Jagannath that he organizes a Rath Yatra? And Srila Prabhupada as a young boy had many nicknames. Some of his relatives would call him Moti, somebody would call him Kocha. He was also called as Nandu, Nandulal. His grandmother would affectionately call him Kachori Mukhi because he was very fond of kachoris. Wherever you would see kachoris are being made, he would go and take those kachoris and fill his pockets with kachoris. In fact, one day he demanded kachoris from his mother and his mother scolded him at night, 9:30. Mother scolded him and put him off to sleep. And around 10 o'clock, Gormon, they came back from the shop and Rajni Devi explained to him what Abhay was, the temper tantrum that he was throwing. So Gormon, they being an affectionate father, he was always indulgent on his son. He said, oh, our Abhay is asking for kachoris, then we should make them. So he woke up Abhay and Gormon, they personally cooked puris and kachoris for his son. So this is how very loving, once they went to a shop, toy shop, and Abhay said, I want a toy gun. So Gorman, they bought a toy gun for him. And then he said, I want one more. Gorman, they said, why do you want one more? He said, I want one on each hand. So he was demanding like that. And Gorman, they would give. So like this, there are many beautiful stories of Srila Prabhupada as a young boy, how he grew up in a Krishna conscious environment. And he had this normal childhood. So, when we hear about these pure devotees of Krishna and we glorify them, then we can understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna cannot be understood without glorifying devotees. So what we are now going to do, we have completed the first 8 verses of the first chapter. Next week is going to be the fascinating discussion where the sages are going to ask 6 very, very relevant questions about modern times. And Sutta Goswami is going to systematically answer these 6 questions, and how the discussions will happen, that will take it up next time. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions regarding today's class?
Prabhuji, what are the 3 timings? Is it 6:30 in the morning or 5 in the morning?
What timing?
For those 3 breaks.
Oh, that's just depends on the sunrise.
Sunrise.
It depends on the sun. There's no hard and fast rule. See, morning Brahma Muhurta is 2 hours before sunrise, maybe 4:30 to 6:30. We generally keep it to 4:30 to 7:30. Afternoon is around 12:30 to 2:30, and evening 6 to 5:30 to 7:30, 5:30 to 7 approximately.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Rasik Govind Prabhu.
Dandavat, Prabhu. Prabhu,
Dandavat.
thank you for the very nice class, very broad and very encompassing. Prabhuji, actually, I wanted to ask you about 2 points. First thing is that you said that the emotional your devotee's vision and the ordinary person's vision are totally different. What they see as valuable is not valuable for ordinary person. What they what time they sleep is rising for the other person. So on as So how do you? So basically, I wanted to understand that, at least speaking for me or something, like I am like only in the ordinary category, or a little bit to try to practice devotional service. So it's not in the middle kind of, a little bit average or very. So we don't see the things. Sometimes like my lifestyle. Sometimes like I mean like what time I sleep, what time I get up. It's not like early in the morning and all that. So at 5 o'clock I start chanting. I will get up late and I'm chanting also late. So how does it balance? How do you? How do you understand? Is it acceptable, or how do you? It's like sometimes you feel sorry. I'm not going to practice that best standard of getting out in the morning and all that. Difficult because I sleep late and have late food because of Bombay lifestyle, etc. Personal habits. So I want to maintain that ideal, basically So I mean, am I on the right? I mean, right means like, is it okay, or how do you understand these things?
Srila Prabhupada's father would get up at 7 in the morning. We heard that, no?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's see, the idea is Prabhupada said, make best use of a bad bargain. So whatever the challenges you are in, within those challenges, do the best you
Yeah.
can. And our best keeps changing every day. When we say do your best, sometimes what we do is we have an artificial standard set up, and we struggle very hard to meet that standard, and we think if I attain that standard, I'm doing my best. No, but our best could change every day. If I'm sick today, my best could be just sitting in the bench and just chanting. When I'm healthy, my best could be to sit straight and chant. So our best keeps changing day to day. Our health is there, our challenges are there. So as long as you are not averse to devotional principles, it's okay if you don't strictly follow the standards. Because it's not the strictness in the rituals and externals that Krishna sees. Some people I know are attached to coffee and they feel bad that they're drinking coffee. I tell them, come on, Krishna is not going to send you to hell because you're drinking coffee. Krishna loves you more than the small details. Krishna has given us a standard. Not all of us can follow all the standard, but as long as we are not averse, as long as we are not, as long as we don't justify our lower standards, and as long as you have a humble heart and you have an aspiration to improve and evolve to a higher stage, it's okay if we are not up to the standards. As long as we want to improve. See, Krishna consciousness advancement is dependent on honesty. And honesty means to know where you are, but not remain where you are. So right now you know where you are, so you're honest. But then you become shameless if you remain there only. Honesty and shamelessness looks very similar. So you're honest, you know where you are, but you don't remain there. Slowly improve. So that pleases Krishna. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Yeah. So we have to accept where we are and gradually try to progress from what a bit. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I want to sincerely thank all of you today for attending the class. Eagerly looking forward to serving you again next week. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.